The command center of Earth defense pulsed with pale blue holographic light, humming with an artificial rhythm that mirrored the urgency in the room. Rows of officers worked at illuminated consoles, their fingers dancing over transparent interfaces, transmitting data, analyzing threat patterns, and maintaining the thinnest barrier between peace and annihilation. Above them, stars drifted slowly through the curved viewports, serene and silent, a stark contrast to the tension seething beneath the calm. Commander Arya Chun stood at the forward display, arms crossed, her expression honed into a blade of discipline and restraint. Her uniform bore the sharp silver insignia of Earth Defense Intelligence, each stripe earned in negotiations, not blood. Across from her, Commander Elias Merrick mirrored her stance, though his posture buzzed with an unspoken urgency. Where Arya's eyes measured every variable with detached calculation, Elias's burned with the kind of fire that came from loss, raw and unyielding. "The colony on Lysura 3 is gone," said the voice from the central AI node, its tone flat despite the horror it delivered. Population, 127,000. Civilian casualties, total. A cold silence swept through the bridge, the kind that settled like dust over an open grave. Arya didn't blink. Cause: Hivekin biological agents, released during atmospheric infiltration. Survivors experienced systemic neurological degradation within 6 hours. No known antidote. The bridge blurred around her for a moment. She had spoken to the governor of Lysura 3 just 5 days ago. A woman named Hallie who wore her hair in wild braids and laughed too easily. Gone like so many before her. And still, Arya's voice held like tempered glass. Were there any distress signals? Intercepted, but not decoded in time. Behind her, Elias's fist clenched. They're not just testing our patience anymore. This is extermination. Arya turned slowly, locking eyes with him. We don't escalate until we're sure. We don't become them. They already made us targets, Elias shot back. This is the 4th colony wiped out in 6 months. Diplomacy is dead, Arya. You just haven't buried the body yet. Their argument had become ritual, an echo of every strategy meeting for the last 2 cycles. Arya, the idealist grounded in calculated restraint. Elias, the warrior growing more brittle with every unpunished atrocity. Before either could speak again, Admiral Tarek's image flickered to life on the primary comms wall. He looked worn, gray around the eyes, his uniform bearing the weight of impossible decisions. "You've both seen the report," he said without preamble. "We're convening the Earth Coalition Assembly in 12 hours. Prepare your statements. The Council will vote on whether to declare formal retaliation." Elias's jaw tightened. Arya's composure cracked just enough for her hand to tighten around the edge of the display table. Tarek's gaze flicked between them. "I know where you both stand. But this time, I suggest you listen to each other. Our civilization depends on it." The screen went dark. For a long moment, the room said nothing. Then Elias moved, striding toward the exit with fire in his steps. "You're not even curious?" he asked, pausing. "Don't you want to know how many children died, choking on their own brains?" Arya didn't flinch. Curiosity won't bring them back, but restraint might stop the next massacre. Elias gave a bitter laugh. "That's what we said after Tenari, and after Kestrel Base, and after Norian. What's your threshold, Arya? 1 million? 2. She turned back to the display, where Lysura 3's surface was now marked in gray, sterile, and empty. She didn't answer. 12 hours later, the assembly convened in a dome-shaped auditorium orbiting above Earth. Delegates from across the planet and allied systems flickered in via projection, thousands of voices rising in chaos. The genocide of Lysura 3 had shattered any illusion of security. The room seethed with accusation, grief, and fury, barely held together by parliamentary order. Arya stood at the center dais, voice even, eyes unwavering. "We are not the monsters we fight," she said. "We are a civilization built on law, on justice, and on the belief that the strength of our restraint defines us, not our capacity for violence. The Hivekin must be held accountable, but not with indiscriminate fire. We must demonstrate not only power, but principle. Some delegates nodded. Others scowled. The ambassador from Mars openly turned his chair away. Then Elias took the floor. My daughter, Lila, he began, his voice rougher than usual, was 8 years old when she moved to Lysara, 3 with her mother. She wanted to be a xenobiologist. She made friends with 3 different species her first month there. She told me she wasn't afraid of anything. A stillness took hold. She died, choking on her own tongue, convulsing on a floor made of glass. Because we chose to wait. Because we chose diplomacy. Because we assumed that evil has limits. He looked directly at Arya. It doesn't. The vote was cast in silence. Retaliation passed. The decision split the assembly. Protests erupted across Earth's megacities and orbital colonies. Civilian councils debated secession. Some accused the assembly of betraying Earth's core values. Others claimed civilization had been a facade all along. Arya returned to the command center in silence. When she stepped through the doors, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't just strategy now. It was preparation for war. Elias was already there, reviewing tactical routes and fleet mobilization logs. Their eyes met, no words exchanged. Something had broken between them, and neither knew if it could be mended. She approached the central display where Earth's defense grid lit up in concentric rings, already beginning to expand outward. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried the weight of 1,000 fallen hopes. I hope you're right, she said. I hope I'm wrong, Elias replied. Above them, the stars continued their slow, oblivious drift, uncaring of the anger swelling beneath them. And far beyond the line of Earth's known space, something stirred in response. The war began not with a declaration, but with a silence, a sudden absence of stars on the long-range scanners as Hivekin warships emerged for void space just beyond Earth's outermost defense perimeter. They did not transmit warnings, demands, or ideology. They simply acted as if the extermination of life was written into their very programming, as if communication was beneath them. Within minutes, the Aegis station orbiting Titan was lost. The distress call was brief, a single word choked out through static help. By the time Earth's defense network triangulated the origin, Aegis was reduced to drifting fragments, burning softly in Saturn's shadow. Commander Elias Merrick stood in the war room, hands flat on the surface of a tactical display now bleeding red across its edges. Flashes of conflict bloomed like wounds on the map. Perseid Station compromised, trade corridors cut, communications severed between colonies. It wasn't just an attack, it was strangulation. We should have struck first, Elias muttered, more to himself than anyone else. We handed them the blade. Arya Chun stood at the far end of the room, still and silent, her expression carved from marble. She had fought the vote. She had called for restraint. But now, faced with the cold efficiency of extinction, her protests were irrelevant. The war had arrived without her consent. Fleet command is spread thin, she said quietly. We committed half our forces to border systems under pressure from the Carinth. We don't have the numbers to hold a line this wide. Elias didn't look up. Then we narrow the line. Let the outer stations fall. Pull everyone in. Focus our strength. Arya flinched. That's abandoning millions. That's preserving billions. The words cut deep. Practicality over morality. Math over mercy. It was the logic of war. Cold, brutal, and inescapable. The room fell into grim silence until Rear Admiral Vargo entered, his face drawn and voice edged with exhaustion. We have a bigger problem. He tossed a data slate onto the console. The screen lit up with surveillance footage intercepted from a Hivekin transmission. It was shaky, possibly captured by a drone moments before destruction. A fleet of Hivekin destroyers descended on a planet, Nerith 4, a neutral world under Earth Coalition protection. Civilians scrambled in the streets as shrieking, insectoid monstrosities burst from pods, spraying clouds of corrosive gas. We guaranteed Nerith 4's sanctuary, Arya said, her voice low, almost broken. They didn't care, Vargo replied. They bypassed our patrols, dropped directly onto population centers. It wasn't conquest, it was eradication. The footage ended with static, but the silence it left behind was louder than any scream. Across the next 3 days, Earth's outer defenses collapsed. One after another, colonies and research stations went dark. Command struggled to keep up, moving resources, issuing counterorders, but they were always a step behind. The Hivekin moved like a storm, predictable in their path, unstoppable in their force. Elias slept 3 hours in as many days. When he did, he dreamed of fire and glass, of Lila's room on Lasara. 3. The window still etched with stars, the bed forever empty. Each dream ended with her eyes, wide, confused, asking him why. He never had an answer. Arya operated like a machine. She read every loss report, memorized casualty estimates, studied the patterns. She barely ate. Her voice, when used, was clinical, devoid of inflection. Her grief had calcified into discipline, her guilt into purpose. Still, the command center felt smaller every hour. On the 6th day of the offensive, something cracked. A peace envoy dispatched under Arya's earlier emergency directive. 3 ships, unarmed, carrying diplomats, translators, and a universal signal beacon, was found. Or what was left of it. The footage recovered from a long-range probe was mercifully brief. The Hivekin didn't fire on the ships. They boarded them. There were no survivors. Arya stared at the final frame for a long time. The image showed an envoy representative, Ambassador Ironi, a pacifist from the Unified Isles, being dragged from her chair, mouth frozen in mid-speech, hands raised in surrender. They knew she was unarmed, Arya whispered. Elias watched her, something shifting behind his eyes. He had not expected Vindication to feel this empty. The council reconvened in emergency session, though the pageantry had evaporated. They no longer wore diplomatic robes or recited planetary oaths. The only questions now were tactical. Admiral Tarek did not mince words. We are facing an enemy that recognizes no law, no border, no life as sacred. They don't want territory. They want silence. If we don't answer with force, we become their prey. Elias stood. Then it's time we show them what prey looks like when it stops running. There were no objections, no counter-arguments. Arya didn't speak. The retaliation was swift. Earth's Black Ops fleet, Project Revenant, was activated for the first time since the Tenari crisis. Dozens of stealth-capable warships departed from lunar hangars under code names older than the war itself. They moved like ghosts, untraceable and unannounced. Their mission was not to defend. It was to punish. Within 24 hours, a Hivekin hatchery orbiting the gas giant Reller was destroyed. 2 breeding ships, each the size of a small moon, were boarded and sterilized with controlled singularities. No prisoners were taken, no warnings issued. And still, the Hivekin did not flinch. They came harder. In retaliation, they targeted the Vega Arch, an orbital megacity of 6 million, renowned for its cultural archives and neutral diplomacy. Earth's response teams arrived too late. The Hivekin didn't just destroy the habitat. They harvested its inhabitants, reducing every trace of identity to ash. The footage was leaked within the hour. It broke the last illusion that this was a conflict of strategies. This was survival. Arya stood once more in the command center, her hands trembling as she removed the diplomatic insignia from her uniform and placed it on the table in silence. It was a ritual, unspoken but understood. The person who had believed in peace was gone now. Elias approached her quietly, a tablet in his hand. "We have a new target," he said. "Hivekin Command Cluster in the Elian Abyss. Deep space. Lightless sector. But it's their mind center, if we're right." She didn't look at him. "And what happens if we destroy it?" He hesitated. "Maybe they break. Maybe they go mad. Maybe they die. Maybe," she repeated, almost to herself. They stood there, side by side, 2 people once divided by principle, now united by necessity. Around them, the command center thrummed with energy, strategy, fear. Every officer moved faster. Every screen bled red. "We're losing who we are," Arya said. Elias didn't argue. Only because we have to win what we are. She nodded once. Not in agreement. In understanding. They launched the alien strike that night. A fleet built in secret, powered by technology never intended to leave Earth's atmosphere. It slipped into the void like a knife in the dark. But as the ships vanished into the blackness, one thought burned in Aria's mind. A quiet, persistent fear, not of defeat, but of the people they might become on the other side of victory. And still, she gave the order to proceed. The darkness of the alien abyss wasn't just the absence of light, it was the presence of something older, something that resisted illumination. Even the starship's sensor arrays flickered sporadically, as though reluctant to peer too deeply into the void. It was here, in this suffocating silence between dying stars, that Earth's final play unfolded. Arya stood aboard the lead vessel Sovereign Vow, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of their trajectory. The cluster loomed ahead, a mass of bioengineered constructs orbiting a collapsed neutron core, pulsing with alien intent. It wasn't a base. It was a brain, a single mind stretched across countless kilometers of writhing, living architecture. They had found the Hivekin's heart, all vessels in formation, reported Lieutenant Rahim, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. Cloaking integrity at 85%. Enemy has not detected us. Elias stepped beside Arya, his own expression carved from steel. The time for deliberation had passed. What stood before them was an opportunity to end it all. One strike, one surgical blow to collapse the Hivekin's neural coordination. He handed her the authorization panel. Final command protocol. Arya hesitated, not because she doubted the mission, but because this moment felt like an answer to a question she hadn't dared ask. Was this who they were now? The answer came not in words, but in memory. She saw again the flickering footage of Vega Arch, heard the screams beneath the static, and remembered the ambassador's final moment on the envoy ship. Her resolve hardened. She placed her hand on the panel. Identity confirmed. Execute Phase 1. Across the fleet, energy signatures bloomed like ghostly blossoms. Null mines deployed, void resonance pulses initialized, weapon systems primed. But then the unexpected happened. The Hivekin moved. Not randomly. Not in defense. They opened their own channels, broadcasting across all known human frequencies. Not with speech, but with images. Familiar faces appeared on the screens. Loved ones. Lost friends. Moments captured in perfect detail, projected back at the humans in an impossible mirror. On Sovereign Vow, the bridge crew froze as their own memories were thrown back at them, twisted with subtle distortions. Arya's breath caught as her sister appeared, face serene, standing in the gardens of their childhood home. Except it wasn't real. Her eyes were wrong. Too still. Too knowing. What is this? Rahim whispered. Elias didn't flinch. A psychic defense. Weaponized memory. They're inside the neural echo. The Hivekin weren't broadcasting a surrender. They were retaliating with psychological warfare, digging into the minds of the attackers, finding every crack of grief, every old regret. Crew members began to falter. On board the Vigilant Rain, Commander Tark slumped to the floor, muttering about a daughter lost during the Exodus War. On the Astrael, systems flickered as engineers abandoned their posts, overwhelmed by visions. Arya shut her eyes. She couldn't block the images. Lila was there now, smiling, running across the sand dunes of Lasura 3, calling her name. But Arya clung to what was real. The weight of the command ring on her finger. The scent of ionized air. The hum of the deck beneath her boots. "We're not here for peace," she whispered. "We're here because they left us no choice." She turned to the communications officer. "Activate countersignal. Flood the network." Rahim hesitated. "Ma'am, that will overload neural inhibitors." "I said now." The fleet responded. Earth's ships unleashed not weapons, but noise, an ocean of quantum discordance, frequencies designed to scramble not machines, but thoughts. It was the psychic equivalent of setting fire to the battlefield. The illusions shattered. The Hivekin structure reeled. Whole segments spasmed, their bioluminescent veins flickering like dying nerves. The cluster began to unravel, form deteriorating under its own sentient weight. Target confirmed, Elias said. Weak point exposed. The fleet struck. 12 anteneural warheads lanced from the darkness, silent and perfect. They burrowed into the cluster, their cores blooming in bursts of anti-thought, energy that unmade cognition. The Hivekin mind screamed across the spectrum in a single, unified shriek. Then silence, a silence that felt final. Elias watched the cluster collapse into itself, strands of alien flesh unraveling like broken circuitry. No ships came to its defense. No reinforcements. No rally. They had done it. And yet, he turned to Arya, who hadn't moved. Her eyes were distant. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. She shook her head once, very slowly. "I don't think they ever had a hierarchy. I think this was just one voice among many." A pulse rippled across the edge of the abyss, subtle but unmistakable. More life forms, but not hivekin. Ships. Dozens. No, hundreds. Human transponder codes, but wrong. Old designs. Some hadn't been in production in decades. A fleet long thought lost or destroyed. Vessels from the edge of known space. The comms officer gasped. "We're receiving a signal. It's encrypted under Earth Command Level Black." Elias and Arya exchanged a look. That level hadn't been used since the darkest days of the Exodus. The message unfolded in text. "We have witnessed your response. You're no longer children. You're no longer civilized. Welcome to the Second War." A cold chill settled over the bridge. Elias leaned forward. "Identify origin." Raheem swallowed. "Sir, it's Earth. It's us." The screen lit up, displaying coordinates not of some distant world, but of Earth itself. A signal had been sent from beneath the Antarctic exclusion zone, long thought dormant. Arya stepped away from the console, realization dawning. "We thought the Hivekin were the enemy. But this was a test. Someone was watching, judging. The Second War hadn't been declared. It had been activated. The Hivekin were the trial. Humanity's cruelty, its pragmatism, its willingness to cross every line was the answer. And now, whoever had waited in the dark would respond. Not as enemies, but as equals. Elias exhaled, his shoulders straightening as he turned to the crew. "Alert Earth High Command. Begin contingency plan Ashfall. We prepare for contact. Defensive stance." Arya didn't speak. She stared out into the void where the Hivekin once ruled and felt no victory. Just a deeper war. One that would test not their strength, but their soul. Because when civilization ends, survival is only the beginning.